Russia is increasingly turning to China's yuan as its foreign currency of choice, and Moscow supports the use of the yuan in trade with other countries. Could that threaten the US dollar?
Official China and Brazil have just struck a deal to ditch the US dollar.
Analysts have been warning of the dollar's impending doom.
I don't want to be overly dramatic, but I think I will use the word doomed in the long term.
The US dollar for the last couple of decades has been the preeminent global currency in virtually every dimension you can think of.
It allows us to have a great demand for our currency and for our bonds. So it often allows us to live a bit beyond our means, so we can borrow easily and at low interest rates in the world to finance economic growth.
To think that nothing could ever dislodge the dollar from this preeminent status as the world's currency. That view is overblown and ultimately will be challenged.
Russia and China are trying to reduce the dominance of the US dollar in international finance by using the Chinese yuan for settlements between their countries and other countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America.
How widespread is the yuan's use within Russia? Are Russian people and businesses encouraged to use it?
Well, until last February, it was very rarely used. The Russian central bank did shift some of its holdings over the preceding 8 years since Putin first invaded Ukraine in 2014 into the yuan, but it hadn't really been a major instrument of trade, savings, or credit financing. We've now seen Russians open up some savings products in the yuan. We've seen trade, obviously, with China, and as I said, with some other countries increase pretty substantially. But for me, what's really key is that China still hasn't offered Russia long-term financing, even with the yuan. So the credit market there is still really incredibly underdeveloped and a tiny iota of what the dollar credit market once was in Russia.
The US dollar gives America significant economic and political power, allowing it to impose sanctions on countries and have its debt bought up by other countries.
People use the dollar because they've always used the dollar.
Where would you rather be invested right now when you look at the world as a whole? For many people, the answer is the US.
Some changes are coming even for a dominant currency such as the dollar. It could become a less important payment currency in international transactions.
However, the economic war against Russia and the confrontational approach to China have led both countries to diversify away from the dollar by keeping less of their reserves in dollars and settling most of their trade in yuan. Many countries are also looking for alternatives to the dollar, such as building international payment systems outside of the SWIFT system or exploring digital currencies.
We may have overlooked some alternatives, whether it's the euro, the renminbi, or, dare I say, cryptocurrencies. The case for a weaker dollar is one that I think we will then address again.
While the dollar's dominance is firmly entrenched, it could suffer weakness by 1,000 cuts, leading to a potential reckoning for America.
Russia's adoption of the yuan is not really a story about the yuan's strength, and certainly not a story about the yuan replacing or immediately challenging the dollar as the key global reserve and, more importantly, global trade currency. This is a story about Russia's weakness and the fact that Russia has huge issues trading the dollar. What the Western sanctions regime mean is that any hard currency that crosses the border physically or digitally with Russia automatically has a discount compared to that currency abroad. How large that is a key effort of sanctions authorities, and Russia tries to resist it. But because of that, Russia has shifted to trading in the yuan. But even then, it's still not quite as much of a share of Russian exports as dollar trade is still today, 14 months on from the beginning of this phase of the war.
In recent years, the share of dollars in global central bank reserves has decreased, and countries like Saudi Arabia and India have considered pricing oil purchases in non-dollar currencies. The Europeans and Chinese are also trying to build international payment systems that are not dominated by the dollar. While there may not be a single replacement for the dollar, the currency could suffer from the erosion of its dominance over time. This could have serious consequences for the US economy, as the country has become accustomed to spending without significant concerns about deficits or public debt. If the dollar's unique status declines, the US may face a reckoning like never before. Russia and China have been accelerating their efforts to diversify away from the dollar and reduce its dominance as the anchor of the international financial system. Putin and Xi have discussed using the Chinese yuan for settlements between Russia and countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America.
And what about Putin encouraging other countries in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America to use the yuan?
Well, Putin has actually criticized what he calls the dollar system for the last 20 years and what is known as the exorbitant privilege of the U.S. dollar is traditionally its ability to borrow in deficits, but on a geopolitical basis also gives the U.S. significant political strength through the extraterritoriality of its sanctions regime. And Putin long has chafed against this and wants to push to have a move away from it, but the ruble is not really a currency that is attractive for anyone to serve as an alternative. So he's willing to promote the Chinese yuan, but this is rhetoric we've heard from Putin for 20 years. And as you mentioned in the beginning, although the dollar's share of global reserves is down a little bit over the last 20 years, it's actually come back up a little bit in the last few years. It is still by far the key trade currency. And I am very much of the view that dollar hegemony is, not under immediate threat. We've found ourselves in an economic war between the West and Russia, and the West's weaponry through the dollar system there is far larger, far more powerful, and makes that an unbalanced conflict. And Putin naturally chafes against that because he wants to take on that order as part of his conflict in Ukraine.
However, the dollar's dominance is firmly entrenched for many good reasons, such as stability, ease, and efficiency in international trade. While alternative currencies and payment systems may add costs, countries are increasingly willing to pay a price for achieving their political goals. The dollar's weakening over the past few years may be a sign of things to come, and if the currency's dominance erodes, the US will face economic consequences. In conclusion, the dollar's status as America's superpower and anchor of the international financial system is facing increasing challenges from Russia and China. While the dollar's dominance is firmly entrenched, alternative currencies and payment systems are being explored, and nations are increasingly willing to pay a price for achieving their political goals. If the dollar's dominance erodes, the US will face economic consequences. It is important to stay informed about these developments and their potential impact on the global economy. If you found this information useful, please share this video with others to help spread awareness.